Welcome to iTWire TV. Today we're speaking with Matthew Tumminello, the ANZ Product Marketing Manager for Dynabook. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for joining us again. Nice to see you always.
Great to see you too.
Excellent. So today I understand you can tell us about, ways that companies can take care of their employees with laptop technology. So I guess broadly, what does that mean? How can an employee take care of, how can a company take care of their employees through their laptop? Isn't just
look, I think there's numbers of ways to do it, obviously we've been talking about things about making sure that the product's right for you, making sure it's got the right features, the right ports, just so you have that seamless sort of experience. I think particularly at the moment, in the sort of the draft of COVID and everything else that's gone on, we've sort of adapted pretty quickly. And I think it's just, making sure you've got the right security, the right devices, the right ports. Just also, there's a few other little things that really come into play as well, just around, just the ease of use things. So, being able to wipe down a machine after you've used it because it's got an antimicrobial coating on it. Just things like that. So there's lots of little things.
Okay, that's great. Well, let's drill into some of those things. Actually, I guess starting with, for me, one of the most important things I think is, the screen. And you spend so much time in front of your monitor. How can, what things could people do to protect their eyes? Well, I guess what does Dynabook offer in that regard to looking after your eyes?
Yeah, so there's a few things in terms of screens. So one is you want to make sure in my view, you've got a full HD screen. So that's a 1080p screen. The other thing you want to look out for is things like these new technologies around, eye-safe. And that's just reducing the amount of blue light for your eyes, basically, and managing that. There's some extraordinary statistics that have come out recently saying that, we're now on screens, and we're talking about all screens, so televisions, phone, computer, in the car even now, there's screens everywhere. But it's just that the damaging blue light can be a bit of a problem for those screens. And it's mainly because there's a sort of a sharp spike in the spectrum. So there's natural blue light like sunlight. But when you're talking about screens and the proximity of the screen, that blue light can be quite damaging. So just some facts and figures, right? So we're spending about, on average now, 13 hours a day looking at a screen, which I was quite surprised by that number, to be honest. I thought it'd be a little bit lower than that. I knew it'd be high, but probably not that high. There's 65% of people are now suffering from sort of eye strain, sore eyes, things like that. And it's the iSafe Foundation, which is basically a bunch of scientists and doctors that got together to sort of create this foundation and talk about, just the dangers of blue light, how to manage it and things like that. And they think if we keep going the way we're going, that around 5 billion people will have short-sightedness by 2050. Now, that's an extraordinary number. And something I think that, I was probably quite surprised by. And when I was researching this, when we were sort of had this, because we've got a Portage AX40L with 12th gen CPUs and has this iSafe technology built in. So I was reading up on it prior to launch, and, you don't get any lack of colors or contrast. So all the colors are still there. It doesn't change the look and feel of the machine, but it protects your eyes. And when I was reading up on this, I've got 3 boys, and my 17-year-old actually came to me and said, "Dad, I've got sore eyes." So we went and got him tested, and sure enough, he needs glasses. Now, I'm not going to say it's solely because of things like blue light, but I think it's a contributing factor, particularly when I don't wear glasses. His mum didn't wear glasses till she was around 30. So why does he need glasses at 17? And I've got 2 more boys behind that who I'm now going, hey, you guys need to be careful, right? So limiting your screen time, making sure you give your eyes a break, wearing, blue light glasses, and where you can, buying products that have this type of technology built in. So, it's bigger than I thought, probably, is my biggest sort of summation of that whole iSafe experience. And it's also, it's pretty easy to fix too. It's more habit things and just being a bit more aware of what you're purchasing, I suppose.
Yeah, brilliant. No, that's really insightful. Actually, that's remarkable what you say about 13 hours in front of screens. And you often don't think of that. I guess you think of the screen as your computer, and you spend all day on that. But then you're right, you go home and you watch TV, and then you lie in bed checking your phone. Yes, so that's really amazing numbers you've given, and that's great to hear about that iSafe technology. But I guess also moving from something physical like eyes, what about, in the light of we're hearing news about data breach after data breach, I guess is there some way that, laptops themselves can have any technology to help protect people, their identities, and protect their data? I guess, is that something that you can, a laptop?
Yeah. Look, and there's numbers of different types of security. It comes in many different forms. I mean, there's security, I suppose, and remember, humans, we're the ones that are sort of creating this problem, but we're also the ones trying to fix it. So, I remember when I first started in the office, people would have Post-it notes, next to their computer telling you what their password was and things like that. So those social things are probably some of the other things that you need to have a look at. But there's certainly a lot of inbuilt technology, right? So at a BIOS level, we've been creating our own BIOSes now for many, many decades. And it's good because it means you can set parameters in and around the way the computer works and the computer functions. So there's simple things like logging on, and generally that's been sort of an alphanumeric password. But there's been, look, it's been 20 years since we started to be able to do, when Tablet XP edition came out, actually. And one of the features you could use with the tablet was you could actually sign. You could sign in, which is just an overlay of the alphanumeric, but it was still a way of personalizing it, I suppose, and making it a bit more unique. More recently, you've got things like, biometrics, so your fingerprint scanners. And actually, just on that fingerprint scanner, we've got the Portage X40L. We've done some tricky technology this year, and one of the things I did want to highlight is we've now incorporated, because you used to have the power button, and then you'd have a separate, fingerprint reader. We've actually incorporated those two features in the one button, if you like. So the power button is also the fingerprint reader, which is pretty cool in terms of sort of not just space, but also allowing you to do two things at once. So there's that, and Windows has now obviously enabled things like face recognition as well. So they're all ways of sort of dealing with security. But then there's always high bits of encryption. There's passwords. There's things like privacy screens. So when you're on a plane or in any type of environment, I suppose, but unless you're sitting directly in front of it, you can't actually view what the other person's working on or what their spreadsheet looks like and things like that. So, not that I have too sensitive information, but I remember looking over my shoulder numbers of times on a plane and thinking, geez, who's watching all this stuff going on? Because, you'd be getting ready for a product launch or something, right? So, not that I think it would have been too damaging to anyone, but there's all those types of things. So, yeah, look, security comes in many different forms. And it's just a matter of adapting to what you need.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's excellent. That's great to hear that all these things are possible. And I suppose, what about, sometimes, we lead a mobile lifestyle. We've got to travel and be, road warriors. You're in the office, you're at home, you've got to do all these different things. And, isn't there sometimes that can cause a bit of stress trying to connect to other things? I guess what features in your laptop technology can help, I guess, with that sort of seamless connectivity?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So, I've obviously been working with the company for, almost 28 years and nearly 30 if you include some contracting time. So, I've been around mobile computers for 30 years, let's call it, right? So I'm now quite used to it, and I have my own little set of habits. But I think with COVID, a lot of people got thrust into this sort of mobile working, even though it was maybe only at home. But I certainly saw a lot more people at coffee shops and all sorts of things like that. So I think people got thrust into it. So the things I suppose I took for granted, people sort of had to learn very quickly. So there's lots and lots of different things. So you need a good device, a good light device that you can carry around. And I have some mandatories in that. I don't really mind what style of device people have, but I don't think it should really be over about 1.5 kilos. I think that's kind of, even for a 15-inch, that's a reasonable request these days. But there's other things, the little tips and tricks, I suppose. So personally, for me now, I'd want a touchscreen as well, because I've been so used to it on my phone, tablets, things like that. I think it helps. I found too with the older generation, it helps navigation. So just being able to, open and shut thing, not by driving a mouse around the screen via a touchpad or external mouse, but being able just to open and shut using your finger. So there are a few things, but probably the real clincher for me in terms of connectivity, as you say, is making sure you set up your workspace properly. So whether that's in an office or a home office, or it can even be in a cafe, I suppose, but making sure that you've got your workspace set up. So good chairs, things at the right height, not looking down onto a screen either, trying to keep it at the same sort of eye level, things like this. And then you get caught into this funny world, right? So and I'm just going to give you an example, so you go to the coffee shop and you're having a Teams meeting. Look, it could be a work thing, could be with your grandma or whatever. And then, some of the built-in things you have are very good. Like our machines have some great features in terms of, built-in cameras, IR cameras, we've got some great audio now as well. But there's just little things. So you'll find sometimes people may not be able to hear you if you're in a busy cafe, right? And you're trying to talk to your grandma, who may be hard of hearing anyway, and she's got all this background noise. I've found this sometimes if you haven't got that right space, and I'm like, hang on a second, what I'll do is I'll just plug in my little, and you can see I've got one here, a little earpiece, just to make it clearer because it's right direct to me and it gets rid of all that surrounding noise. So I can quickly grab this, put this in. Make sure I've got the right connectors here, so a USB or something like that, and bang, she can hear me perfectly, and you sort of continue on. Now, there's other little things and tips and tricks as well. So I know a lot of people these days, when they're purchasing machines, a lot of particularly the thin and light categories, won't have things like an RJ45 or an Ethernet port, right? So in our range, every single one of our platforms, except for one, has that, and people say, oh, but why would you need an Ethernet port these days? We've got wireless routers and all this kind of thing. Now, I've had this exact experience, same sort of thing, when you've got everything built into a device correctly and you've got touchscreen and you've got the right ports and everything else, things will be fine because you can quickly adjust. When you don't, and on this example, if your wireless router goes down, and it does happen, you can still use your Ethernet cable to connect and you're fine. Right, you just go, hang on, seems to be a problem. Let me just connect directly and we'll sort this out. So I think it's little things like that. If you've got to remember a dongle and you don't have all the ports, then those kinds of things can really trip you up. Now, sometimes it may not be a big deal. Like I said, if you're talking to grandma, perhaps you can just jump on the phone and call her or something. Although, because you like to see people these days, right? I mean, I like seeing you there, and it's just, you get a bit more feel for the conversation. But it's important to have those kinds of backups in place, whether it be a port or, a function, because they're the things that sort of enable you to keep things on track. So it could be just grandma, but it could be something really important, right? And if you have that sort of breakdown either in the hearing or the sound or the connection, then these things pose a real problem. So, one thing we've been doing at Dynabook, formerly Toshiba, obviously, for now some 37 years, is making sure these things are built in so you don't get tripped up. So, we try and not let people fall over their own shoelaces. We try and make sure they're all set up, ready to go first time, and don't have to learn that perhaps hard lesson, which could cost them, I don't know, a job or something, right? It could be quite an important thing. So, yeah, look, there's plenty of things like that are built into our devices, but we do make sure that everything's built in.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's you're right. I remember, gosh, many times trying to find adapters for different types of monitors and things. That's interesting. So, and actually, you talked about the quality of voice and things like that, and I guess that's a thing now that we are spending a lot of time on these sorts of voice nearby around the world and things. And I understand as well that some of your laptops have technology to enhance that audio or things like that, like some artificial intelligence to boost sound or pick up voice better. I guess, what's that about?
Yeah, look, and there's basically it's like self-leveling. I mean, so basically, it'll try and they have what they call multi-array microphones, right? So it'll pick up where you're sitting, and it'll sort of direct that and not hear the background noise. So, which is a good example here because I've actually got building works directly across the road. So it's probably a pretty. I don't know. I'm hoping you can't hear it, but I can certainly hear it in the background. Things like that. So things like that make a huge difference. So there's the microphones. Making sure they have that sort of dual array. They can pick up your voice and then get rid of the sort of background noise. And they do that sort of automatically, which is really cool. Making sure you've got a good camera. Particularly for things like Windows Hello, you have to have a certain camera to enable that to work. And then you have sound, obviously. Now, I find it quite amazing, and I'm going to use our Portage X40L again as an example. That machine's a beautiful machine. In fact, I kind of want one, to be honest. I'm really favouring one at the moment, not just for the iSafe, but it also has like Dolby Atmos sound involved, right? So the sound quality is fantastic. Now you're talking about a machine that is literally 1,050 grams, so just over a kilo by a few grams, and that's a 14-inch chassis, and yet the sound that comes out of that is phenomenal. So there's a 4-speaker option within that, so it's basically 2 tweeters and 2 subwoofers. Now, the sound and the quality that comes out of that thing is nothing short of astonishing, and I haven't probably been impressed by sound like that since we started our relationship with Harman Kardon and Dolby Atmos some 22 years ago, right? So I was blown away when I first saw that sample earlier in the year, and when we launched it around April this year. So it makes a huge difference, just being able to have that immersive experience with the way people can hear you, with the way they can see you, and then obviously the way they can hear your voice coming across through. So, making sure that you're not getting all that background noise. So those things are actually, again, I think we kind of got thrust into it with COVID, and I think people quickly found out if they had a good product that perhaps, just went seamlessly, or whether they had a product and wow, this really isn't performing. I need to get some, a better camera or better speakers or something, right? Or a headset or something, because it's just not handling what we're doing. So the good thing is we build all this stuff in, right? So that's probably the best example I can give you in terms of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. No, there's been some awesome advice and guidance. So let me think. So you mentioned the antibacterial layer on the devices, and we talked about iSafe and protecting your eyes and being careful with light, and enterprise-grade security, protecting your data and your online identity, seamless connectivity, and then you also spoke about ergonomics and ports and having the right things, and then, mobile features and quality sound. Wow, so these are some great tips on, how a laptop isn't just a piece of office equipment. It really can be something to help maintain the health and, well-being of your workforce as well.
Yeah. Look, it's an interesting one too, and I had a couple of interesting examples even this week. One was someone needed to be more mobile. Just their working arrangements had changed, and they needed to be more mobile. And we sort of at the moment we're in a situation where we're coming into the office, twice a week. And they sort of needed to not do that at the moment because of the way their work's going. So it was really interesting to see that the features that were built into the machine and the device that they had was just, it handled it so well. So that particular instance, they had a beautiful 1080p screen. Just to highlight a few things, they had a beautiful 1080p screen. They had LTE built in, so therefore they've now got an RJ45 port for connectivity if it needs to be physical. They have wireless built in. If both of those failed, they can obviously use things like LTE. They had one of our machines with the Dolby Atmos sound, so I've been doing meetings, regularly with this particular individual, and it just worked, right? It was so easy that that was kind of just happened without even thinking. The other one was an interesting one with a customer this week, and it's more to do around how they deploy. So typically pre-COVID, they've been in a situation where they get bundles of we'll call it hundreds for the sake of the discussion, and they basically run them all up and then deploy them, or people will come into the office and collect them and get them working and away they go. So they're now moving to a scenario where, and this company's quite large, by the way, so there's actually many thousands of people involved. They're not going to do that anymore. So what they're basically going to do is we're going to use things like Microsoft Autopilot with SCCM, in terms of build structures and stuff. And basically we're going to ship the machines individually to thousands of locations, and they'll plug in and bang, they'll be up and running. So that's quite a change from where we've been in terms of technology to what we've moved towards. And one of the reasons they're doing that is just because their workforce has, partly because of COVID, but partly because of the change in business, it's just changed completely. So now they're literally going from, IT guys running it up and handing machines out and, showing where people wear on buttons and things like this is, to literally having everything preloaded, being sent to your house, you plug it in, and pretty much you're up and running. And there's like demo videos of the product and things like that. So that's probably a really good example of how the world's transformed. We've been doing this for a little while, so it's not too new, but, to do it en masse like that in big companies, and now starting to do that like quite regularly, that's probably the change,
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That is a big change. And that's the dream, isn't it, for the technology IT team in the company, that they don't have to be involved. The companies can just purchase and get the device and it auto provisions. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, and it is an interesting one too. So that they sort of, not only do they have it all running like that, they basically have a list of information built in, which basically enables them to, just like read about how to use the machine, if they want some tips and tricks, things like that. Also, if they have a problem, so it could be a warranty thing, although generally our warranty now is like 0.3 of 1%, so it's extraordinarily low, so it's unlikely they'd have a failure. But in the off chance they dropped it, say, down the stairs, and it was a non-warranty job and they've broken something like that, they knew where to go, how to get it fixed. They move back into our service centres. They're all owned and operated by ourselves. So generally the diagnoses are really quick. We hold something like $7 million worth of parts in the country, and they get fixed. I think it's a ridiculous number now. It's like 96% of all calls are resolved within 24 hours. So
Wow.
it's pretty good stats, right? In terms of A, not having many failures, and B, when they do fail, there's a quick turnaround, which I think, again, these devices have become so intrinsic in the way we do things now. They're not just work, they're very much social, they're very much entertainment. They cover lots of different bases, these devices now.
Yeah, wow, that's wonderful. No, that's exciting. As always, Matthew, it's great talking to you. I always feel excited about, what the technology holds and what it can do for us. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, we should keep talking because there's lots of good things coming down the line. So I'll keep you informed.
No, I look forward to it. Okay, no, well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Matthew, for your time once again. That's been great.
Thanks, David. Always a pleasure.